The summer of 2025 will be remembered not for its heat, but for the floodwaters that swallowed entire landscapes across Pakistan. As thick monsoon clouds gathered with unsettling intensity over the Indian subcontinent, nature began scripting what began as a season of expected rains soon spiraled into a humanitarian crisis of unimaginable scale. Over 800 lives lost, millions displaced.
A cloudburst came and my brother's entire family had been killed. All 6 family members died during the rain.
And the nation's agricultural heartland drowned under a muddy tide. But behind the torrent, a darker narrative flowed, accusations that the deluge was not purely natural. Eyes turned across the eastern border to India, where overflowing dams, political mistrust, and a decades-old treaty collided in a storm of their own. To understand what happened, we must go upstream, both geographically and historically. The rivers that fueled this disaster are part of the Indus Basin, a complex water system shared between India and Pakistan since the 1960s. That year, the Indus Waters Treaty was signed with the World Bank's mediation. It carved up 6 rivers. The eastern ones, Sutlej, Bas, and Ravi, went largely to India. The western rivers, Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab, were allocated to Pakistan. The treaty was hailed as a diplomatic marvel, yet from the very beginning, it brewed unease. Pakistan, reliant and downstream, feared upstream control could choke its survival. India, keen to exploit its own rivers, saw limitations in the treaty's rigid framework. Over time, massive dam projects like India's Bakra Nangal and Pakistan's Tarbela stood as towering symbols of this fragile balance. But as climate patterns shifted, the treaty, designed for a different world, began to show its cracks. Then came August 2025. The Indian Meteorological Department warned of heavier than usual monsoons, but few could predict just how relentless the skies would be. Rain hammered northern India for days, filling reservoirs at breakneck speed. On August 20th, Bakra Dam teetered at 97% capacity, the highest in 30 years. Pong and Thane dams weren't far behind. Indian authorities, battling floods of their own in Punjab and Himachal, made a decision: open the floodgates. On August 26th, Pakistan was officially notified. What followed was a massive water release, 1.4 million acre-feet from Bakra alone, all within 8 hours. Experts say this should have taken nearly 2 weeks. Downstream, the Ravi and Sutlej transformed from rivers into walls of water. At Firozapur, water levels soared past 500,000 cusecs, shattering the superflood threshold. In Pakistan's Punjab, the flood didn't roar in, it crept. It was the quiet kind of devastation. In the village of Shadara near Lahore, farmer Ahmed Khan stood on his rooftop, watching his fields dissolve into a murky ocean. It came in the night. No sound, just the black water crawling in, he said. Similar stories echoed from Sialkot to Bahawalnagar. Despite alerts, the flood outpaced action. In just 2 days, over 300,000 people had to be moved to temporary shelters, many aboard army trucks and school buses. Crops were obliterated. The fertile belt of Rahim Yar Khan was buried under a blend of Sutlej and Chenab overflow, wiping out 2.5 million acres of farmland. In its wake, waterborne diseases followed. Cholera threatened already overburdened health camps. As the crisis escalated, Pakistan's government lashed out. Planning Minister Ahsan Iqbal accused India of manipulating river flows for strategic gain. PMLN's Abid Sher Ali called it water terrorism on national TV. Supporting these claims, satellite data from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization showed Indian dam discharges had intensified the monsoon impact by nearly 40%. But Indian authorities were quick to respond. Spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal claimed the actions were necessary to save lives within India's own flood-affected zones. "We warned Pakistan 3 days in advance," he stated. Caught between the rhetoric were experts who saw a deeper issue. Dr. Danish Mustafa of King's College London explained, "There's no proof of deliberate sabotage, but the treaty was never built to handle climate extremes." Pakistan's vulnerabilities, melting glaciers, aggressive deforestation, aging infrastructure, only magnified the blow. Dams on both sides were operating on outdated assumptions in a warming world. By September 4th, the floodwaters reached their peak. In Sindh, old wounds reopened. Thatta district, still scarred from the catastrophic 2010 floods, was submerged once more, this time losing another 1.2 million acres. In the north, landslides triggered by swollen rivers buried entire communities. Children suffered the most. 150,000 faced malnutrition, schools lay in ruin, and relief camps struggled under pressure. The economic loss climbed rapidly. The World Bank pegged the total damage at $7 billion. Faisalabad's textile hub fell silent, cotton exports plummeted, and nearly a third of Pakistan's cotton harvest was declared lost. Yet amid the despair, courage surfaced. Over 50,000 army personnel were deployed. Countries like Turkey and China responded with aid and equipment. Volunteer groups crisscrossed floodwaters to deliver supplies, and women in shelters like Fatima Bibi cooked communal meals for hundreds daily. But this was not the first time Pakistan was caught off guard. It was part of a pattern. In 2010, the country saw its deadliest flood in modern history. Then again in 2022, when rains 7 times the average displaced over 30 million people. In 2025, those lessons remained unlearned. Fragile embankments collapsed once again. Bureaucratic delays hampered alerts. A Yale climate study showed how warmer air now carries more moisture, making every monsoon more intense. Pakistan, emitting less than 1% of global greenhouse gases, continues to absorb the heaviest costs. Social media added fuel to the fire. Doctored videos, misinformation, and rising online nationalism turned a shared tragedy into a battlefield of narratives. But beneath the noise, one truth rang clear: both India and Pakistan are victims of the same climate threat. As September wore on, the waters retreated. But what they left behind was devastation. Farms lay buried under toxic silt. Factories in Multan stood rusted and silent. Cholera broke out in 15 districts, with over 5,000 reported cases. Economists estimated a 2.5% dip in Pakistan's GDP. Still, there were signs of change. The UN launched a $500 million plan focused on green recovery, elevated housing, mangrove buffers along the Indus Delta, solar irrigation in damaged farmlands. A rare virtual session of the Indus Commission was held, with both sides agreeing to improve real-time data sharing. But trust, like the floodwaters, remained elusive. The floods of 2025 were not just a climate event. They were a warning bell, loud, destructive, and impossible to ignore. A river once revered as a source of life became a weapon of suspicion. With 800 lives gone, 2 million displaced, and a nation's economy in shock, Pakistan faces a hard reckoning. It also raises a question for the world. How long can an outdated treaty govern rivers in an overheated, unpredictable world? And yet, amidst tragedy, glimmers of cooperation emerged. From engineers in Delhi and Lahore building flood alert systems together, to growing calls for a reimagined Indus Treaty that reflects today's climate realities. Because the river doesn't care for maps, borders, or politics. It flows where it wills. And unless the nations it nourishes learn to manage it together, the next flood may not give even the warning this one did.